quilt chart, the 4-fund strategy is less risk. It's more dependable than the S&P 500 because it has many asset classes. The S&P 500 would likely be the worst of the 4 asset classes. The 4 asset classes together are likely to be better than the S&P 500 on its own. But we have to also remember, we all want the best of the next 15 years for ourselves. We want the near future to be good. This 17-year-old young lady that I talked to, and I've got her set up with her first $6,000 small cap value investment. I told her, for the first 5 years, it will feel so good if it looks like 95 through 99, because 95 through 99 small cap value compounded at over 20% a year. Yeah, yes. Or look, on the other hand, it could look like 1970 through 74. Which is better for her? A terrible 5 years or a great 5 years? Well, the great 5 years sounds like that would be better. But the terrible 5 years means the first 30,000 is buying stuff cheap that later is supposed to be worth more. If it isn't, then we've missed on the whole thing. So that's a part of what being a real professional advisor is, to understand what is this part of a portfolio for. I have part of our portfolio in a hedge fund that I helped start in 1995. It is not for my wife and for me. And it is built to use leverage plus market timing. I mean, 2 things that people don't want to do. But I happen to help start it, and I happen to know the people that run it. And I trust them as much as I trust anybody trying to manage money for people. But it's a part of my portfolio. It's 10% of my portfolio, less than 10% now. And so that's where it becomes important to decide where does it make sense to take more risk. I tried, when I was an advisor, I would try to get old people to invest more aggressively with the part of the money that they really felt was for others. But a lot of them would say, well, you know, I'm not sure. I don't need it now, but I might need it later. All right, let's compromise. How about if we use more of a balanced approach than you would do for a young person, but more risk than you might, knowing that it's not likely to be used in your life. This is the magic, I think, of being a good advisor. And that is why when I think about an individual being their own advisor, how much of this stuff do they know? What is it that we can help teach them that if they wanted to, they could literally go out and be an advisor someday, because you know the ropes, you know what to expect, because you know history.
Okay, thanks, Paul. Let's go ahead and let Brian ask his question. He has his hand raised.
Okay.
Hi, Paul. I love your work. We're Talking Millions. I thought it was absolutely fabulous. And I'm doing what you recommended by putting about 20% of the small cap value in the Roth IRA. And if it's not for me, it will be for the next generation. And I think that's absolutely terrific. I'm using, and you also mentioned FISVX, the small cap value index fund of Fidelity. You have that. But my question is, as I noticed in your best in class portfolios, you have other things, IJS, which is the iShares version, but that follows the S&P 600. So when you look at your quilt charts and all of the terrific work you and the guys are doing, am I better off in the FISVX, which is following the Russell 2000 value index, or do I want to be more in the S&P 600, following the S&P 600 value index, or a mixture of both?
Well, I will tell you that from everything I know about the work that Chris does, at the beginning of this presentation, I talked about my teachers. there may be people who don't believe that I look at the people that are working with me as my teachers, but they are truly teachers that have helped me understand this whole process better. I'm embarrassed to say that I am basically a salesperson trying to help. I am not the technician. I am not the person figuring this all out. I am a teacher, and teachers aren't necessarily the ones that do stuff. They teach stuff. Chris does stuff. And when he digs into those best in class, I trust because every time I go through why, and he explains patiently. You've seen Chris present. I think Chris is one of the finest presenters. He's so calm, he's so patient. I would, if I had the choice, I'd be taking his recommendations. And you have them available to you at the Fidelity, or you have them available at Vanguard. Now, the fact that we've also done portfolios for Fidelity and Vanguard is only because there are all the people that have these. That's what they have available. So we've tried to give some help. And that may be your case, is that you just don't have all these different ETFs available to you where you're investing. Is that the case?
For me personally, well, my 401k, it's limited to just total market index funds. And then, but yeah, so obviously my Roth IRA, which has all the options through Fidelity, I guess I could purchase the Advantis, and I guess your options are obviously much more open when you have, when you're with Fidelity or Vanguard than just the general 401ks.
Yeah, and let me make it ever so clear. There is not one thing we do that is done to benefit us. Now, when I say that, I'm sure there is something we do to benefit us. Well, from time to time, we ask for money, or from time to time, we get people to get the books and pass them on. But the bottom line is, Chris is doing everything he knows and continues to work with the people from these different companies like DFA, like Avantis, to understand exactly what they're doing, or as exact as they will let us see. Now, I love DFA and what they've tried to do for investors. And the people at Avantis, however you're supposed to say it, they're out of DFA. They're almost all of them out of DFA. And these are the people who have built portfolios with the work of Dr. Fama and Dr. French and others like them. There are more doing it today than just those two guys. So Chris is learning. And when I sit and start listening to Chris and these guys talk, I realize I'd rather be someplace else, because they're really getting into the weeds. He cannot sit and get into the weeds with all that stuff with the people who follow our work. I don't know that it's appropriate, because we'll start appealing to the wrong people. We really are trying. I mean, it's not that we don't want to help everybody, but we are trying to help the people that need to understand the basics of investing and returns and risk. And I will tell you, very few investment advisors understand what's in the weeds. You try to get somebody who tries to sell you an indexed annuity to actually explain an indexed annuity, or read the contract and then ask them, what does this mean? They don't have a clue. They do understand how an indexed annuity works, and they can sell them rightly or wrongly. But the kind of when I say we're trying to develop the knowledge of an investment advisor, I'm not talking about a person who works in the research department at DFA or Avantis, but the kinds of people who are in the trenches dealing with these questions of risk and return and asset allocation. I hope that helps at some level. In other words, what I'm saying is, take Chris's advice is the best advice that I have. Now, every once in a while, recently somebody wrote to us and said, made a claim. And in fact, I don't know if this has come out yet in a podcast, but what they did was they said, why do you have small cap blend in the portfolio? Because small cap value almost always beats it. And Daryl, who's an engineer, said, I'll take that. And he did the study and he made it really simple. And he showed the guy that he was wrong. Often small cap blend does better than small cap value. But Daryl took all the years that it did and he boxed them. So you could look at that quilt chart and see exactly all the years. I would not have had the patience to do that. I hope that helps, Brian. Thank you for your kind comments.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate the work you guys do is terrific.
You're welcome. I appreciate it.
Okay. Do you want to take one more or
one more?
Okay.
Make it the hardest one you possibly can.
Right. And then I know there's a couple others that I'll get to Paul or and he can, well, I think it would be best if we didn't get to your question, if you email Paul and then he can directly answer your question.
And by the way, and I may answer it directly if it's real easy. If it's a longer comment, I will likely use it. I won't use anybody's name. Nobody will know who it is. I'll answer it in a podcast or in a newsletter.
Okay, great. Okay, so the last question is regarding equities in taxable accounts versus tax advantage accounts. Do you mirror the fund across both types of accounts? Will I have a large tax bill from portfolio turnover in the taxable account?
Well, remember these are ETFs, so they're going to be more tax efficient. But I do want to recommend a book. I want to recommend, I did this before, but Your Complete Guide to a Successful Secure Retirement. Larry Swedroe. It's cheap, like $11 or something. It tackles almost any complex subject, dividend stocks versus non-dividend stocks and how much to take out and all sorts of things. One of the things it covers in here is investment asset class placement. Where does an asset class belong in a portfolio? What part should be in taxable? What part should be in a 401k or a Roth? And I really think it is worth the time to read his part of the book on that. It's done very well. And again, we do not try to help people make those decisions. And Larry Swedroe has looked at this very carefully. And then the question is, do you want to take the time as an investor to build a portfolio that to take the four parts of that portfolio and spread part of it using the taxable account and part of it doing in the tax deferred or tax free? That tends to become work to people.